Okay, so before we start, there are a few things that I've added onto the new script that I want to explain. So first and foremost, you can see that the mothership and background here has a container, a bounding box that groups all of these nodes together. Okay, so to create them, you just select a few of these nodes here and search up backdrop, and this will create a container for your selected nodes. And on top of that, you can even change color and rename this backdrop, and you'll display onto the backdrop itself. Right, so we don't need that, so I'll get rid of it. And this is good because when your new script gets too big, it will help you to organize a little better, and you can find the node that you need specifically under that setup. Right. Next, I've brought in 6 footages, 3 pyro and 3 of the clouds, and they were pre-rendered before from the previous videos. Okay, so you can see the 3 pyro here, as well as the 3 clouds and smoke. So I will demonstrate how to set up one of these pyro and we can just copy and paste onto the other 2 pyro because they are the same, and just need some minor tweaking of sorts. And then after that, we will move on to the smoke and clouds, and we just do some minor tweaking there. Okay, so to start, we will put down a OCIO color space and OCIO file transform. And these are nodes that we can apply our loot or lookup tables to, which changes the colors of our images with a preset that has been created by someone else. All these loots can be downloaded online, and there's plenty of loots to use. For me personally, I'll be using the Sony S-Log. So we can just apply these 2 nodes into our setup first. So I'll just plug in those 2, right? And we will look through this OCIO color space, and we have an error here, and that's because our file transform does not have the loot. So for me, I'll be using Sony, as I said, and this gets washed out, and that's because under the input, it's not sRGB. So once we select that, we get a more realistic look of the fire. But there's no glow, and that's not how fire works, because it was not rendered that way. So to do that, we will use our AP Glow. So AP Glow is a node that I've downloaded from Nukepedia. So Nukepedia has a lot of nodes we can use that is free. Right, so I'll put down an AP Glow, and this will create a glow effect on top of our pyro here. So we use the image, and then when we look through it, this is what we get, and it's a better glow than the original glow that Nuke preset have. And then we'll merge it into our pipeline. So we'll be using B, meaning it will be behind, and then we view, and this is what we get. Right, but now it looks weird because it looks like a cutout. So we'll change over to plus, and this looks a lot better. It gels together better. And this is generally the setup. So we will tweak the AP Glow to make it look less flat. Alright, so we can come in here and we can tweak the intensity. We'll bring it down. Bring it down a bit, and then we'll bring up the persistence so that it glows more, looks hotter. We'll bring it way up to 4.15, and then we'll tweak the screen black and screen white so that it doesn't look overexposed. And also it shrinks these glowing fall off a bit more. To shrink that even more, we will use this max size, and then it becomes more condensed at the center, and then the size of fall off will soften out the hard edges of the glow. And then we'll crop to format so that we can save the rendering to just this area. And I'm also using the proxy so that it's faster as I view different frames, so it loads faster, because if not it will be 2K and be very heavy. Okay, so that's the setup. Then on top of that, I will put down a final grade and final color correct of sorts. So this will allow me to tweak the color and grade on top of our setup for our color correct using loop and also the AP glow, so that I don't have to mess up and get too many things to control. So I'll go to my grade and I will tweak white point and multiply so that it doesn't look too overexposed here. And then I'll come down to color correct, and seeing that it's a bit too white and washed out, I will tweak some of the saturation here. You can tweak anything here, but I'll use the master because the values are fine. So I can increase my saturation up just a bit and a contrast so that the white doesn't wash out the whole shot and cover the mother sheet. And I will tweak the gamma. So gamma, I will use the color wheel. I will make it a bit bluish so that it reflects the space a bit more. But I also want to retain some of the red, so I will just pull up the red a bit and bring down the blue. And that looks fine. So I took out the green. Okay, so then I will plus it into our main pipeline. So when we take a look at our main pipeline, this is what we get, and looks fine. So then we will do a comparison, and immediately it gels into a shot a lot more, considering that there's this misty look to it. Right. So then I will copy this setup onto the other two pyros so that I can save some time, and also, if anything, I'll just have to tweak the final grading because everything else is the same. They're all the same pyro. Okay, so a little side note, I will normally hold control and create this button here so that when I change my plate or footage, I don't have to look for my node that's connected to it. I'll just plug straight from my button here straight up to my plate, and it became a habit. It's a lot easier for me to know where I have to replace my footage, because sometimes replacing read doesn't work. I have to delete and recreate the read. So when we combine all three together now, right, so we'll move to a frame where all three of these pyro is present. Okay, so that's what we will see, and generally that looks pretty alright, and it does look like fire, and it gels into the shot pretty well. And also the lighting, the lighting has the same color as the pyro. So after that, I will create a backdrop for this last grading so that I know what I have to tweak when I have too much to handle and I can't remember. Then I'll just rename this as final grading, just a note to myself that these are the notes that I can adjust. And then I'll just create a bounding box for the rest of these pyro. Oh, it's overshot. Okay, so I'll just bring everything down. I'll just highlight everything. And okay, I'll just bring everything down here. Give myself a little bit more space to work with. And I will just rename this. It's good to name your stuff, because if you have to pass your work to other people or you have other people to troubleshoot for you, it will be a lot easier. Okay, and we can tweak the colors here even. I'll choose something a bit more hot to represent fire. Alright, so that's more or less what we have for the pyro, for the explosion. So for the clouds, it's not much. It's just mainly blending and grading it so that it fits the shot a little better. And it's simulated by another FX artist. So it's not footages or downloaded images, because these clouds react to our ship's lighting as well as the explosion. You see here, now it's a bit grainy, so we have to get rid of that. And also, clearly it's a bit too sharp, so I'll just put down the standard grade color correct. And then after that, I'll also put down a blur. I'll put it in, and then I'll just increase the blur enough so that the grains go away, but not so much that the details, the black and whites, gets mishmashed into a blurry mess. Okay, then we put glow to emulate a space glowing cloud, and we can tweak the color so that it matches our background a bit more, because this was rendered with our actual HDRI, but it's not the color corrected HDRI. So then I'll take our multiply here, bring it down so that the most forward, most in front is not overshadowed by the ship, and the back here is, you can tell that it's covered by the ship's shadow of sorts. And then I'll bring down the saturation, because in real life, things tends to look more desaturated, and that creates this realism look. So I can bring down the saturation, increase the contrast. Now I'll just tweak the gamma a bit in my color correct, so that it's reflecting the space a bit better. Yeah. And so that will be the benchmark, and that's our setup. So we will then copy and paste this setup onto our other two smoke clouds. And of course, we have to do minor tweaking, because it's not exactly the same, right? You can see this is too bright and it stands out like a sore thumb. And the purpose of this is so that it blends everything together. So then we will have to tweak the multiply and just gauge with our eyes and see the values, if they are 1-to-1 or if they're the same. So sometimes what I do is I play with the levels, or rather the bar. I'll just tweak it, pull it left and right to see. So what I do is I bring it down to 0, I see what it does, and I bring it back up to 1, and then I see what are the changes, and then I tweak accordingly. Because you will never know what each thing does until you see and test, So I'll just do a quick left right and see what changes and what didn't change. And if I'm not happy with that, I'll just undo and go back to the original state. So then here's what I'm doing. So I'm just tweaking everything, touching everything, see what they do before making a final decision. So likewise, I copy and paste onto the third pyro. So for this, it's a bit more faded out. So I have to bring up the value so that it matches accordingly to the front smoke. Because these two is supposed to be connected, but they were rendered separately because of distance. So I know that the grade is the main issue here. So I bring it up and immediately it looks like it's together. It gels a lot better together. Okay, so I'll just scrub through and see what are the changes that's made. Okay, so everything here looks fine. Then next, I will move on to doing some of the post-processing and also creating this final grade and color. So this final grade and color encompasses the whole setup, the whole shot, as a master controller for the final look. So normally when everything, all the values are fine, I will come down to this and do a final tweak to the shot. So let's say I have two shots and they are of different elements, but they are in the same film or in the same setup. So what I will do is I'll come down to the last grade and color correct. I'll tweak it so that this shot A looks and feels the same as shot B, so that it looks like they coexist in the same world and not as two different elements entirely in the same sequence. So this is a helpful thing to have, a final grading, like a final grading for the whole shot. So here I have the shadow. I'm tweaking the shadow so that it looks a bit greener, because a lot of the green has been taken out through every single elements that we have. So here you see I have the final look, and I feel that the AP glow is a bit too strong. I'll just bring it down a bit, the hotness of this, because it multiplies on from the other grading and it sometimes get too overexposed. Okay, so I want to draw the audience eye to the top left corner of the shot so that we focus on the explosion. So one way to do that is I will duplicate the second pyro and use it as a glow right behind the pyro. So I'll use under instead, so that this glow will be behind the pyro, and the glow will be big and faded out and not as strong, so it doesn't stand out exactly, but it still draws your eye into that corner. Right, so I'll bring down the intensity and the persistence, meaning it's not hot and not glowy, and this is what we see. Right, it's larger and it's in the shape of this pyro, and we just increase the white size, screen white, and it's still orangey and it still blends in with the shot, with the pyro, and we don't want that. So one way to do that is using a desaturation node, or rather a saturation node. I can desaturate the color. So when I bring it down, it becomes white, becomes like a source of light. So when we see the whole thing, our eyes draw to the top left corner a bit more than the rest of these, the bottom of the ship and the clouds, because they are just fill-ins to draw our eye into the shot. So every element has to draw your eye into the shot. So as you can see that there's an arrow downwards, so like it frames the sheet. Okay, so this is what we have. Then we will move on to creating the post-process filters for the shot to make it look more like it belongs in a TV or cinema or film like, basically. So one of the elements is aberration. What aberration does is it breaks the RGB layers so that you can see by a few pixels, and you can see like sort of discrepancies at the corners, at the ends of our shot. So you can't really see it here unless I bring it up. You can see it becomes blur, but it's not really blur. You can see that the blue and the reds are getting put apart, and it creates the illusion of at the ends of a TV, or at the ends of a TV that's being pulled apart. And it's a subtle effect. You don't want it to be too strong, because if it becomes too strong, then people will notice, and then you look weird, and you don't really want that. And then next is vignette. So vignette is like a border of black gradient around your shot to focus the audience eyes even more into the center of the shot. And also, likewise, it's a very subtle effect. You don't want it to be too strong either. So everything, I will bring it down to the minimum, and that is enough for you to know that it's there, but not enough for you to know and see that and figure out that you put those things, not to the untrained eyes, at least to the audience. And you also don't want it to have a very strong border. Basically, you don't want these two things to make it look very obvious. So I'll just tweak some of these advanced settings so that it blends a bit better together. And the vignette is a bit too strong, or it could be the pyro. So I'll come down to vignette. Maybe it's the vignette is breaking up the smoke, the pyro a lot. You can see here. So it's not really working. We can take a look. If we switch it off. Okay, so then I'll bring down the aberration multiplier instead. Right, so when I bring it down, you see that the pyro is not going crazy anymore. Like, it's very obvious. It's just there. It's just enough for you to know that it's there. Okay. So I'll move to other frames. So it's good to check a few frames. And I mean, with a big resolution shot like this, it will be very hard for you to press play and have it load every single frame. It will be like play blasting a simulation. So what I'll do is I'll just select a few frames that's of importance, and then I'll see if it looks good. If it looks good, then it's good to go. I'll just do a full render and I'll check it out and see after it's done. Okay. So that's that for these smoke and pyro setup. Then next we'll move on to some of the smaller stuff like sparks and dust trails, and then more of the final post-processing that are too heavy to be set up together in one full pipeline like that.